All right, we are back. Thanks for hanging out with us. Rob Ellis, Derrick Gunn, Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. I got her some interesting quotes. Doc Rivers was on the Bill Simmons podcast.
Yep.
And he was asked about any number of things Sixers-wise. But let's start with this one, the challenges of coaching James Harden. And he said, quote, "It was challenging, more because we were fighting two things, and not like visually fighting, is that James is so good at playing one way. And the way that I believe you have to play to win in some ways is different, because it's a lot of giving up the ball, moving the ball, coming back to the ball. I would have loved to have him when he was younger, when that was easier for him, because giving up the ball and getting the ball back is hard. He didn't finish as well as he finished because he's older. So yeah, times to get him moving and playing the way I needed him to play. I thought the first half of the year, I thought we were the best team in the league. I thought James was playing perfect basketball. He was the point guard of the team. He was still scoring, but he was doing more playmaking and scoring. And then the second half, he started trying to score more, and I thought we got stagnant at times." Interesting. I mean, it's kind of what we thought in this sense, Derrick, because after the season was over, some of the stuff that was leaked out was Harden wanted to get back to playing with the basketball freedom, that he had, AKA, and it sounds like he wants to score again as opposed to being a passer first. The shame of it is he's an older player whose skills aren't the same in terms of scoring. I think in this case, I'll defend Doc Rivers. I think Doc Rivers had absolutely that's the right role for him. The guy led the league in assists, so he's pretty good at it too. But it just seems like he wants to do what James Harden wants to do, regardless.
When you've played the game a certain way for so long, it's hard to adapt.
Yeah.
Especially when you're an older player. If you look at the guards of today, look at how they are constantly moving. Look at Steph Curry even. Why do you think Steph Curry gets so many open shots? If you look at him, he's always swinging around the picket fence, man. He's always going in and out of the bigs, trying to get separation. But Steph Curry is a different player. He's a thinner player. James Harden is a bulkier player. And James Harden has played the game one way. Now you're asking him to be a facilitator. It worked well early on. We applauded him for being that facilitator early on. He was still scoring his 20, 25 points, but yet he was averaging 11, 12 assists a game. But the long grind of a season can take its toll on you. But see, if James Harden was moaning about, I'm going to go back to being what I was, that's the wrong time of the year to do that.
Yep.
Because
just finish the year out doing it the way the coach wants you to do it.
Maybe his body took a toll. Maybe his knees and ankles, asking him to be a constant mover, move off the ball, get the ball back, facilitate. They're going to try to double you up, find the open man. Maybe it was hard for him to adapt. Yeah, the good thing is we never heard about this during the course of their playing.
Yep.
During the season. We never heard there's tension in the locker room between James Harden and Doc Rivers. If there was, they kept it under wraps very well. Mm-hmm. But for James Harden, and we saw in those two games, see, I don't know if I can argue against James, because you look at those two games against Boston, he scores 45 and 42 points. He's the reason they won those games.
No doubt.
Okay?
Yep.
So then he tried to go back and be the role player that Doc wanted him to be. And when he did in the series, he was shooting 21% from the floor.
Right.
So who's right and who's wrong here? I think there just wasn't a nice medium to appease both people. In this case, James had to be either or.
Right.
He couldn't be both. And it hurt them more so than it helped them.
I think it's a good point, Derrick. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can look at it from both guys' standpoint. But I wonder, it's like a chicken or an egg when it comes to Harden. Yeah, he went crazy in those two games, but maybe if he was willing to be more of a sort of facilitator, maybe other guys can help you more. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a fair point to look at. The other thing that he got into, Doc, a couple different things. So let's touch on the process. And he was the one who kind of had to come in here after Brett Brown and after all the whole when they had finally, they're trying to win and all that. So this is what he had to say regarding the process and whether you could still feel the ripple effects. He said, "Oh yeah. You could feel it all throughout the organization. Elton Brand, when he brought me in, that's what he told me. This is not just about coaching the team. We're bringing you in here to change the culture." And he meant everywhere. We looked through the whole organization. If you're not on board, you're not trying to win. If that's not what you're breathing every day, for me, it's time to go. And I met with everybody in the organization. And overall, I thought we were starting to get it done. So he did discuss that. You know, when you go to something as extreme as that, it's hard to just sort of wipe it away with one fell swoop. There's always going to be lasting effects of it. I think that's what the Sixers are maybe learning, you know, in hindsight a little bit here.
Why was the coach involved in talking to everybody in the organization? That should have been the owner and the GM's job. If you're not on board with what we're doing, hey, we understand and it's time for you to go. I don't know why the coach would be involved in a situation like that.
Yeah.
You know,
if anything,
if anything, that message could have been relayed from Josh Harris and Eldon Brand. Hey, this is Doc Rivers' edict. This is what he expects, not just from his players, but from the organization.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't necessarily have to have the coach in on those type meetings. I mean, fine. They respect him enough to include him in that, but he didn't necessarily have to be there. And why would you have to worry about people being on board to win? Isn't that what it's all about? Trying to win?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't know if they deleted any people from the equation from top to bottom if they weren't on board with that. I mean, maybe that was something that was overlooked and that we didn't hear much about. But I like the fact that they wanted Doc to change the culture. But we just kept questioning year in and year out, was Doc the right guy to get this team to the promised land? And unfortunately, in hindsight now, no, he wasn't.
Yeah. And I don't know that anybody is, frankly, you know, with the makeup of these guys, with the just sort of lack of what they have in general. I don't know that anybody is. And look, you know me, I wasn't a Doc Rivers fan, but I don't know that I don't look at this and say the Sixers didn't win a championship because of Doc Rivers. I don't say that. I put more of it on Embiid and Harden than I do and roster than I do him, for sure.
I go to our other resident Philadelphian, our producer Tone, who chimes in. That's because the owner doesn't care about this team. As long as he breaks even on revenue, he's good. Ooh, that's a little harsh. Ooh.
Yeah, the only thing I would retort with that is I would just say he puts a lot of money out there for Daryl Morey,
yes,
for Rivers, for Nick Nurse. If he didn't care, I don't know that he would spend this kind of money on that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think I worry about him being spread too thin, about a lot of this just being about profit, not having maybe the investment in the city. You know, I know people used to rip Jeffrey Lurie for this, but you know, Jeffrey Lurie is very much invested in this city. Hey, look, the bottom line is they haven't won anything with him. So I get the anger and the frustration.
Well, it's worked well for Kroenke, right? I mean,
yeah,
he's got a team in Los Angeles. He's got teams in Denver. It's worked well for him. I just think it's just a luck of the draw that it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
If you're putting that kind of money into any investment, you want a big return on your investment. And that big return in the NBA is to win a championship. It just didn't pan out. You know, the process started before Josh Harris had ownership of the team. You know, and no matter what they tried to do, it didn't work.
Right.
It just didn't work. You know, I just can't get over the fact they had that many high draft picks consistently, and only two of them are still here. Who, Maxey and Embiid?
Yeah.
I just blows me away that all of those top picks were bust.
Yeah. I hear you. It's too many misses. It was just too many draft misses, period. If you really want to boil it down to one thing, it's that. Way too many draft misses.
Mr. Taz says Josh Harris is a trash owner. Well, I'm not saying that. I'm not going there.
Let me give you a little bit more here from the interview that with Doc. Joel Embiid. And Simmons asked him if Joel Embiid could get to the level that you saw with Joker winning a championship. He said, quote, number one, he has to be healthy in the playoffs, and this was the healthiest, but he still wasn't 100%. And number two for Joe is he's got to make all the players better in the playoffs.
Right.
And Joe, his numbers are unfair because if you look at his numbers in the last 3 years in the playoffs compared to his regular season numbers, they're not very good. Yep. A lot of that is due to the first year I had him, he hurts his knee. The next year he gets hit in the face and he tears ligaments in his hands. And then he has the knee injury this past year. So health is number one. The second thing is, this is what's, the health stuff, it's just unfortunate. But this is the stuff where you look at it, you say he's got to maybe think differently about the way he approaches things.
Right.
He said, second thing is I stayed on him daily. He has the ability to make his teammates better. If you look at our games this year, when he did that and dominated, hard to go away from Joel Embiid. It really is. He's got to do that on a consistent basis, not just on the court, but also off the court. Just be around the guys. Spend some time with your guys. Let them know that you love them because they love you. I thought Joe, in 3 years, you can see growth there. We forget how young he is. We also forget his first years. He didn't play, Bill. I'm telling you, that sets a tone. So I think some of it is, be more available. That doesn't mean you have to go out and party, and be some wild guy in a club. But hey, let's grab dinner when we're in Milwaukee. Let's come on over to the house or whatever.
Let's watch a game together. Let's watch a movie.
Let's watch a movie. Cards. Let's play video games.
Play cards, something.
Yeah. That to me is really valid stuff. I get some guys, not everybody is the life of the party, but you can show that to your teammates. That's a form of leadership. I think that's real. So I think that's something he has to get better at. I
mean, let's face it. You never embrace me the way I embrace you.
Exactly. I'm like Joel Embiid. I am. I have to get better.
And that's why this bond that we have is sometimes it's strained because you don't open yourself up the way I do to you. So.
Oh my God. Well, I thought this part was interesting too. He was asked ideally what you would add to the team. And he said, if you could pick the perfect guy without a name, it would be a big point guard who can score. And the reason is we need a playmaker other than Joel and Maxey right now. Maxey is more of a scorer right now. He's downhill with speed. When we get to free him up and just go score, you can make the case like a Ginobili, who at times was their point with his passing, give them toughness. He was an attacker who was great off the ball. It allowed Tony Parker to just go and be free. Someone in that category be a perfect fit for this team. All right. I mean, that's some interesting insights. I will say that, he gives you what he thinks they need. Joel, what he needs to do different. Learn a little something there.
Well, I mean, couldn't Harden have been that same person? You got Maxey. You can free up Maxey. And then it goes back to what I was saying. If James was allowed to shoot more, doesn't that open things up for Maxey?
Yeah.
So basically, Doc, you asked Harden to change his role. And then you said, basically, if we had that point guard who could do this, that, or the other would open things up. Well, you had him in Harden. You tried to change him. Now, it worked. It looked good on paper, but you got him away from being what he was. And you should have taken into consideration he's 33, not 23. James Harden is not running around the court like a lot of these guards do to free themselves up to get the open shot. And you can't do it anymore.
And that's the other thing, Derek. You mentioned Steph Curry earlier, and I know Steph Curry's older than Harden, but Steph Curry is perpetual motion. The guy's a freak in terms of his conditioning. I don't know that I'd call Harden a freak in terms of his conditioning. So it's
James is a freak in terms of enjoying his free time when he wants to, from what we hear.
Yes.
But okay, he's earned that right. But when he stepped between the lines, he's all about business. I wonder, now that we're finding this stuff out, I wonder how much that affected James Harden's psyche.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't know who he was supposed to be night in and night out.
Could be.
There's an inner struggle. Because there were times, think about it, James would give up the ball when we thought he had an open shot, and when he drove the paint, he would kick it back out to somebody else.
Right.
Instead of going in and going through his Academy Award-winning theatrics of falling down, and he would kick it back out instead of taking the body blow.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that affected him. Maybe he thought too much. It got to a point he was thinking too much because I'm trying to be a team player. This is what the coach wants me to be, but this is who I am. That's, we were screaming like, why do you keep passing up these open shots?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Look at Jimmy Butler last night. Where the heck was Jimmy Butler most of the game until he scored 13 consecutive points in the fourth quarter?
Well, even early in the fourth, Mark Jackson on the broadcast last night was like, hey, Jimmy, it's time.
Yeah.
We talk about you and what you've done to carry this team, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now's the time to show up. And it's crazy. Almost right after Jackson said that, then he started going off. But yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And I get it. I think sometimes Butler, and we see it during the regular season, paces himself. There was no time for pacing last night. Like, you needed to be that guy for 4 quarters if you have it in you. The only thing I would say in his defense is he doesn't have a ton of help offensively. And it's hard. And I thought the Heat role player, like Lowry, I thought played well. I thought Strus was really good, putting it on the floor and finishing last night. But it wasn't the greatest out of bio showing in the second half. He was better in the first half. He didn't have a lot of help. So, it's a little bit of a tough situation. Miami needs scoring help. That's for sure.
Oh, there's no question about it. Yeah. As good as they are defensively, they need a little bit more scoring help. Man, your buddy Tone will not let up on his Sixers organization. Any venture capitalist wants their investments to succeed. That doesn't mean he cares about winning. The Sixers being exactly what they are is a win for him financially. Ownership isn't being intentional about winning. They're just spending money and hoping they fall into a championship. Winning requires intention, not just signing a check.
Well, I think
the rebuttal is
the rebuttal. Look, I don't know. I do not want to be in the role of defending Josh Harris because I'm not a fan. But I think there have been.
Oh, hold up! Stop right there. Why are you not a fan of Josh Harris? And I'm not here to debate. I want your opinion.
Because I don't think he runs the organization well. I don't think he. If you're going to go through the process,
right,
have the guts to stand up to Adam Silver, the commissioner, and say Sam Hinkie's our guy, and stick it out with Sam Hinkie. Instead, he caved, and they allowed Jerry Colangelo to come in here, who ended up hiring Brian Colangelo, despite whatever they say, which was a total disaster. Then there's a period of time where Brett Brown is running things, which is the period of time when they ended up trading Mikal Bridges for Zaire Smith. Then they bring in Elton Brand, who was over his head, who wasn't ready for the position. So I think there's an incompetence with Josh Harris. I don't know that it's intentional, like where it's just about making bucks, because I don't think he'd pay Daryl Morey the kind of money he's paying him. I don't think he would close on a Doc Rivers or close on a Nick Nurse, who I think was the best candidate out there, if it was just about making a buck. Now, he has done very well financially because this team has been very supported by the fan base. And I'm curious. And by the way, I never mind when Tone pushes back. I think it's good. I like it because it'd be boring if we all agreed on everything.
Right.
But I think that he's not great at what he does, but I don't think it's like straight carpet bagging kind of stuff where he's just in it for the buck solely. I just don't think he's good at it. But generally, I think there have been so many mistakes made here over the years with this team. And it's, if you're going to lose on purpose, like I look at Denver last night, they drafted well. They made good free agent moves. They had made good trades. You look at the Sixers, they haven't drafted well. They make a trade to get Tobias Harris in, and they give him a monster contract, way overpay him. They've made so many other mistakes along the way. Al Horford was a huge mistake. They haven't been a particularly smart organization over the years. And that's my biggest issue. I don't, and again, like I look at them now and I see a team that's painted into a corner that's going to be really hard to get themselves out of. Like, I think we're going to look back at this whole thing and all of it in Embiid's career, and it's just going to be failed. It's just going to be failed. I'm sorry. Like, playoffs don't mean anything now.
Okay. Based on what you're saying, we were all excited when Josh Harris hired Morey. We were all a great basketball mind.
Yeah.
We were all excited initially when they brought Tobias Harris in here. Great swing player. That's what we needed for this team. People went through the roof when they made the trade to get James Harden here. Mm-hmm. So they made the necessary moves to try to make the product better. It just didn't mesh for whatever reason. It just did not mesh. And so we sit here today, and I mean me included, we sit here today. Was Morey the right hire? Did they keep Doc Rivers too long? Everybody was elated when Doc Rivers was hired, even though he had the dark cloud over his head. He can't get past the second round. It was a move. People had grown tired of Brett Brown. Mm-hmm. Doc Rivers was a move in the right direction. It just didn't pan out for whatever the case may be. And I'm not sitting here defending the moves, but I was on board. All these moves they made to try to make this product better, I applauded just like everybody else did. And it's still, the results turned out way short of the destination.
Well, I think the other part is too, at some point, you notice we mentioned like everybody else, but at some point the players have to play and make plays and come up big.
There you go.
And I think that Harden is a guy who often in his career has come up small in these kind of situations. And I think Joel Embiid is very much in a category of doubt and skepticism and pessimism as to what he's made of in big spots, because the showing that he gave them is just completely unacceptable, And I wonder going forward here, if it looks like this another year, that you don't have to cut your ties with him too. We've gotten to that point, and he may want out himself. I mean, let's face it. Here's the pattern usually the way it works in the NBA. When a team doesn't have success or gets to a certain point and they start to level off or go down, the natural inclination is for a fan base to turn on that player or get frustrated with that player. Embiid right now, I don't think it's gotten to that point yet, but I think it's going to get to that point. Then that player the said player usually then wants out. And I think we're inching real close to that with Embiid, where they have one more season of getting knocked out in the second round, and it starts raining down on him, and then the whispers start that he wants to leave. It would not surprise me if it goes that route at all.
But as we sit here today, we agree we can't see the product getting better because of how strapped they are.
Yeah,
so it's going to be another season of frustration. And Joel's what, 30 now? What is he, 30?
30-ish. Yep.
Okay, so yeah, if it goes south of what we've had to endure the last 3 seasons, it's imperative you move him after next season and try to get as much capital back as you can for him, whether it's draft picks, whether it's players and draft picks, because you've reached the point of no return. You've become the Utah Jazz. You've done everything you could to make this product better. Now you have to open a trap door, let everything fall through, and try to restructure this thing again.
I know. And you wonder if they're hesitant to do that, Derek, because they went through the process, which was the worst of the worst. I don't know. But it feels like they're going to try and run this thing back. And I think if Morey does what we all expect him to do, kind of go out of his way to bring James Harden back, I just think you're prolonging the inevitable. I really do. I think it's a big mistake.
Yeah.
It's tough, man. All right. Yeah.
No, I agree. It's like the Flyers. I mean, the Sixers are not as bad as the Flyers, but you've taken this thing as far as you can go with the blueprint that you've had over the last several years. Now it's time to come up with a new blueprint. And by doing so, you may have to step back before you step forward.
Right.
And being in a highly passionate, highly critical market like Philadelphia, you're going to have to take the verbal darts. You're going to have to be thick-skinned enough to take the verbal darts because they're coming. Even though people understand what you're doing, even though they may be even on board with what you're doing of retooling this thing, you're going to have to endure the verbal darts that are going to come your way from the media and the fan base alike.
I hear you. All right, let's hit it. Let's come back and we will dive into the NFL. So the whole Stephon Diggs thing is very confusing, Derek. And whether he reported, whether he didn't report, whether he left before practice today. And I don't know what that's all about if he did, but it's a mess. And with the way the Bills have restructured things, he's got them, up against it. That's for sure. If this thing really is nasty. So we'll get into that. A bunch of other guys, at least 2 other big name players are unhappy with their contract also and are not reporting. Mac Jones will give you an update on him. A lot of New England stuff, which is interesting because Eagles play in week 1. So you want to know what's going on with them. We'll talk about that. We'll get into the best receivers in each division in football. We'll run through everybody in the NFC, everybody in the AFC. We'll do that as well. So we'll get into all of it when we come back. Don't go anywhere. That's Derrick Gunn. I'm Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. I'm going to tell you right now about Flynn Tree Services. Yes, Flynn Tree Services is an experienced, licensed, and insured Pennsylvania tree services company that will trim or remove any unwanted trees off of your property. They offer cost-effective solutions to any tree problem that you may face, and they are experts at trimming all types of trees. They serve southeastern Pennsylvania, South Jersey, and northern Delaware. Flynn Tree Services specializes in tree removal, stump grinding, as well as tree pruning. Now, keep in mind, it's a good time of year to get your trees evaluated before the really nasty stuff starts in the summer with the winds and the rain. could potentially bring down some of those trees or those branches. You could go to their Facebook or Instagram page for more information or a sampling of their work. Give Flynn Tree Services a call at 610-850-2848, 610-850-2848, or online at flynntreeservices.com. That's flynntreeservices.com.